Hi everybody, welcome back. This is week 6 of our 6-week series on conservation psychology. Now, this is exciting for me. It's sad because it's our last webinar, but it's also exciting because these topics are just amazing and what I really like working with. This is how we consume sustainably and getting an understanding what that is, but also appreciating philanthropy. Now, as anybody knows who runs a non-profit organization, it's always difficult to get volunteers and to get funding, etc. So I'm going to present some ideas that maybe you can use in your organization to change that. So thank you so much again for joining me. Let's jump into it. If you've not joined my webinars before, my name is Josh O'Neill. I'm the founder of the Litter Club. What is the Litter Club? Well, the Litter Club is a volunteer-based organization in Singapore and Malaysia, also in Thailand now. And we do a lot of beach cleanups, community work, community cleanups, etc. So if you want to know who I am, I'm also a member of the American Psychology Association, specifically in the area of conservation psychology. I'm certified green project manager. I'm certified project management. I'm crazy. I love learning. I'm also a dive instructor. That's not my full-time job, but I love doing it. And I'm also a Toastmaster, and that's why I love bringing these webinars to you. So I always start with my why I'm doing this. And because I truly believe that I'm here to inspire others to change their conservational behavior. And this is, I did say conservational, conservational, I did say that correctly. And the reason that I want to inspire others, I truly believe that with the right exposure, people can change behavior, and it's not an easy thing to do, and I've spent most of my life trying to get people to change their behaviors, and in some cases have succeeded, but it's always a big challenge, but it's a challenge that's worthwhile, and it's a challenge that I love. So let's have a look what we're going to look at today. So we're going to talk about conservation, sustainable conservation, then we're going to talk more about philanthropy, etc. Conservation, the consumption, our production, how we do that, the development around that, consumerism, and this is a word that is out there at the moment, what drives that, what's the difference with our wealth and our happiness, how does that interact, and then in our pro-social behaviour, this is where we're going to look at the philanthropy side, we're going to look at awareness campaigns, how they work, goal gradients, direct requests for funding or indirect, framing and anchoring, how that works, and then looking at identifiable victim, who's at fault here, and then of course social identity, our identity versus our congruity. Let's jump straight in. There's lots of words on these slides, and the reason that I put lots of words on these slides is because people can go back, they can look through, and rather than listen to my voice all the time, they can flick and see what's actually on the screen. So please bear with me now. The definition of sustainable consumption and production, this was done by Oslo in 1994. It's still relevant today. The use of services and related products which respond to basic needs and bring a better quality of life while minimizing the use of natural resources and toxic materials, as well as emissions of waste and pollutants over the life cycle of the service or the product. So not to jeopardize the future, the needs of future generations. And this is a really big area as well. We have to look after our planet, not just for us, but for our children. So sustainable development, 2 ways of looking at this: increase the efficiency of consumption, i.e. make it better, make our packaging better, make our, this is all driven by demand, consumer demand. So therefore fewer resources to generate the same product and services. This is it is a weak form of sustainability. It's not something that we can sustain. But changing our consumption patterns, which is really what the Litter Club is, it kind of focuses on and will focus on more in the future, in changing the way people consume and looking at reducing that consumption. This is a strong form of sustainability. We go and pick up litter on a weekly basis. However, we always look for ways that we can stop the litter actually getting there in the first place. So if we look at consumerism and think about what consumerism really good, it's the acquisition of goods and services we love to buy. And of course, COVID has changed our world, and now we buy a lot online. Shopee and Lazada and Amazon, etc. Is amazing. But there is a view that an ever-expanding acquisition of goods is beneficial to society. The more we consume, the better it is. It drives our economies, etc. And also, we're led to believe that consumerism and the consumer drives innovation. So the more that we're after something, the more we demand, that will drive innovation to be able to do that, and positive and negative. But also, this is the free market economy. I can sell to whoever I want to, wherever I want to, and this is our typical way of understanding consumerism. So we are consuming more and more and more goods as we go through the years. So if we look at the consumption and the economy, this is purely based around our gross domestic product, and you would know what a GDP is. If you don't, a quick idea. If we have a healthy economy, that means we have a good GDP and good growth. And the GDP is based on the value of goods and services produced over that period of time, and usually 12 months. So the percentage increase in our GDP, our gross domestic product, what we are producing and what we are selling, exporting, etc., or consuming within our own country, marks the growth of our economy. If we see a decrease in GDP, basically we're heading towards a recession, which is what nobody wants to happen. Therefore, we have continuous drivers to boost the GDP, work harder to create more, and to get people to buy more, which of course is consumerism. When we buy more, there's more packaging, there's more waste, there's more energy cost to produce and to ship, etc. So it's a never-ending circle. If we have a quick look at the GDP per capita, this is based on 2020, the US dollars. You can see US very high. A lot of the North European countries as well, and then of course, moving towards the middle of Africa, etc. Very low GDP there, and this shows you basically how the world economy is run and dominated. Back to 2017, I don't have new growth on here, but you can see Russia at that time, 1.8% growth. China, huge, 2017, this is 5 years ago. Huge increase, 6%, and it was a flourishing economy. Australia, 1.8%, Indonesia, and again, a huge economy growing very quickly within the Asia area, 4.9%. So consumerism feeds materialism. Now, what materialism is that we have to own more things. This is the absolute opposite of being a minimalist, is what I try to do. But we end up prioritizing objects and comfort over spiritual, intellectual, or cultural values. So it's better to have the latest car and the nicest house and the biggest yard and the most perfect lawn, etc., rather than worry so much about our spiritual or even our intellectual materials. So there was actually a survey done, and this survey has been happening since the very early 60s with freshmen in the US. Freshman survey, it's called, from 1966, it's carried on to 2015. It's continued actually after that. But what they asked was two questions. Would you rather be well off financially, or would you rather have a meaningful philosophy of life? Now, if you look back in the 60s, during the, I guess, the drug-induced era, you can see that there was a very high percentage of people in 1966 saying, we really want to, love, peace, and mung beans, and not so many people saying, well, we need to be financially well off. That changed as we moved into the 70s and early 80s. You can see the cross point there, and ever since then, the focus has really been on ensuring that we are financially well off compared to having a meaningful philosophy of life. And this is a really interesting survey, and just really shows how the mentality of what we are about is now being driven purely from a materialistic point of view. So wealth and happiness. If I'm rich, I'm happy. I would be happier if I was richer. So the relationship between wealth and happy is quite complicated from a psychological point of view. Within a country, wealth is typically correlated with happiness. So the more richer you are, the more happy you are. If you're poor, you're not happy. But this is relative. This is purely relative. This is purely based upon perception. So the relationship is actually stronger for life satisfaction than for emotional well-being. And life satisfaction means being able to buy all of our stuff on Lazada. But typically people within wealthier countries are not much happier than those from poorer countries. So increases in GDP over time, so our economic growth, do not necessarily correlate with changes in happiness. And I've got a graph here of the happiest countries in the world. Now this was just been done, it's just released. I read the information only a week ago. So if you look, Denmark, Finland, Switzerland, Iceland, Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, Luxembourg, all Northern European economies, all these people are happy. It is not necessarily based upon how rich they are in those countries, but they are happy. New Zealand, which is my home country, comes in there, then Austria, Australia, and then Germany, etc. So quite interesting to see just really what countries are the happiest countries in the world. And of course I'm in Thailand at the moment, which is the land of smiles, and I know this is a happy country. So we're going to jump straight in now, moving away from that sustainability and understanding that sustainability, our consumerism, our materialism, etc., and how we can promote more prosocial behaviour. Now, prosocial behaviour is really around philanthropy, how we can get more people aware of what we're doing and how we can get them to contribute to what we're doing. So philanthropy, you can think of is really promoting the welfare of others by donating time, money, or other resources to them. Now, some of the things that you might do, which is philanthropy, you might donate blood, you might do a beach cleanup with the Litter Club, you might volunteer at a food bank to be able to help hungry families and individuals in our community. You might give money to a homeless person and help them out, or you might help out at an animal shelter, the RSPCA, or somewhere like that. That's philanthropy. That's promoting the welfare of others by giving your time. So it's not just money. This can also be, as it says here, time, but also donating goods. And this could be to donating goods to Salvation Army, Red Cross, etc. People who are doing good things, and those goods, second-hand goods maybe, or brand new goods, will help others in doing it. That's philanthropy. So really, I think all of us are philanthropists in some which way or form, because if you slide, philanthropy is big business. And going back a couple of years ago in the US, 65 million adults volunteered time for a charitable organisation. 65 million. If only I could find them for a beach cleanup. 79 billion hours of service was donated by Americans in 2019. 410 billion in charitable donations was supplied. Excuse me. And 2 to 5% of all income is actually donated to charities. Now, where does that money go? And who gets all of this money? $410 billion US dollars. So you can see in the area of interest in billions, so 123. So basically 1/4 of all charitable donations go to religious institutions and establishments. Then bringing that back to around about 50% of what they get, money in education, helping people with education, etc. Human services, foundations and health, you can see we contribute a lot to these areas, helping people with education, helping people who are in difficulty. International affairs in there, arts, culture and humanities, and we can see 10% of what is given to religious organisations actually gets into the area where we work, and that's the environment and animals. And then of course world and women's and girls organisations also benefit in the charitable giving that happens in the US. And this reflects across many countries. I don't have anything specific in Southeast Asia, but this gives you an idea as to where money does flow from a charitable point of view. But $11.2 billion would be quite helpful for the Litter Club and any other organisation out there doing good things. Excuse me. All right, so let's have a look at awareness campaigns. let's focus on that, excuse me. So we're going to focus on conveying the importance of an issue with the goal of getting somebody to change their behaviour or to motivate them to have a behaviour that will address or solve a problem. And I've used a couple here which are actually from Dubai Water Authority. So we are made of the same water that we are damaging in our environment is the same water that 80% of our body is actually made up of. And we are made of water that we waste. So this is a campaign, really a campaign that is focusing on reducing of water consumption in Dubai, which is probably a good idea because it's quite dry there. But with awareness campaigns, there is millions of dollars spent, billions of dollars I think spent every year by governments and organisations to create awareness. Generally they're not effective at promoting donations or changing behaviour. They do create an awareness, which is whatever, but it doesn't drive any behavioural change, and it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to give money just because now I'm aware of something. So they work, but from a philanthropical, oh my goodness, from a donational point of view, then they don't. So how can we improve philanthropy? How can we get more funding for what we do? So we can look at goal gradients. Now research shows that donations increase as a fundraising campaign reaches a goal. If you look at the picture on the left, you can see that just visually they're raising about $365,000. They are probably 3/4 of the way there, and you'll find that people will start giving more money as it gets closer to the goal. So if you are raising funds, do use goal gradient, but do not use what you're seeing on the left. You can see they're raising 1.1 million here. They've raised quite a lot already. They've raised more than what you can see on the left-hand side. However, if you look at it from a visual point of view, they're still a long way to go, and donations tend to be weaker if that's the case. Direct request. Now, this works well. This is basically walking up to somebody and saying, I need some donations to be able to make my project work, to be able to do some, to be able to feed hungry families, etc. So if you just ring a bell with a generic request and say, hey, please give me some donations, people tend to not necessarily walk up and drop them in the bucket. However, if you do make eye contact and you do kind of, let's say, harass them a little, basically just ask them, excuse me, would you like to contribute to help, you will find that you get a greater donation. So if you are doing a donation fundraising, the way to do it is to have people who give a direct request and actually ask, create eye contact, and then it makes it more personal. If you're just ringing a bell, it's kind of like, that's okay, somebody else will probably give. But if somebody comes up and asks you personally, then you will double think and go, yes, well, okay, maybe everybody hasn't done it already, so I should do it. Framing and anchoring when you're asking these questions as well is quite interesting. So this is around our perception that of cost and reward. How much is it going to cost me? If I'm going to give $1, what's the reward of that? So is it just going to make me feel good, or am I going to be able to see the person that I'm looking after, or the animal I'm saving, or how am I going to get that? And so people like to be connected with that. Back in 1987, for the American Cancer Society, Wayne and Smith did a study, and this is they went and knocked on 300 doors, and they randomly asked for a generous amount or any amount, a low cost or high cost request. So would you like to contribute? They didn't say any amount, but would you like to contribute to the American Cancer Society? And then they asked for a generous donation. So a generous contribution would really help. And they actually found that generically, if you just asked for a contribution, 36% of people gave. If you said a generous contribution would help, only 23% of people actually gave a donation. But in a later study, they actually used the words, even a penny will help. So anything that you can give at all actually increased donations to 58%. So again, a good way of using psychology to be able to gain greater philanthropy for your organisation. So here we go again. Another way of doing this, and again, this is used especially with people like World Wildlife Fund and the Children's, Save the Children Fund, etc. But Thomas Schelling, I love this quote. There's a distinction between an individual life and a statistical life. So if we are connected to somebody, or we know that person, or they are specific, then we are more likely and have a greater tendency to actually donate and help them. You can see here this little child's name is Imran, and we have an opportunity to actually help. Now, if we know the child's name, we can see the picture of the child and the fact that the child is a victim of famine or war, etc., then we are more likely to actually donate. So if you are an organisation that is looking and raising funds, you need to make sure that your imagery portrays what it is that you're going to do. And if you can connect it to a specific person or a family or a name or show a picture, etc., you'll find that will actually increase your philanthropy quite considerably. One thing that changes though is who is to blame, this area of who is to blame. So we tend as humans to think what caused the actual problem initially. So was it an external attribution, i.e. as we saw before with Save the Children, famine or a natural disaster, or there's political turmoil in the country or happening at that time, which is impacting that person and creating this issue? Or was it an internal attribution? So, do they take drugs? Are they negligent? Are they stupid? What is it that actually caused this problem in the first place? So, if you look at the way we give, internal attributions for the problem result in less giving. So there is this, who's to blame? So let's just have a quick look. This is something I threw together quickly. Why is she sleeping on the street? If we look at it, in internal attribution, she's a drug addict. To give money to her, we may not be so inclined to help compared to maybe if she is affected with COVID, all of her family have COVID, they're all isolated, she's out and she's finding somewhere else to sleep or something like that, or she has COVID and the family is, or where she is staying has said, you cannot stay here, you need to isolate, she hasn't got anywhere. She could be addicted to gambling, or she could have been kicked out of her home, through maybe domestic violence or something like that. What do we tend to want to give more to? She may have dropped out of school and not have anywhere to go, not be educated, or she could have gone through a recent divorce. All of these are drivers in the sense of, will we actually give money to this person? And that's just psychology. That's what we do as human beings. So these are the drivers. So again, if we're raising funds and we're looking for philanthropy, we need to ensure that we are identifying whether it's an internal or external attribution that caused the issue. Moving on to social identity, this is our tendency to classify individuals into groups. Yeah, so they're all drug addicts, or they're all drunks, or they're all this, or we do this. Yeah, and group membership is part of our self-concept. I'm part of an environmental group. I'm part of a scuba diving group. I'm part of Toastmasters, etc. And these are our in-groups. These are the groups that we belong to, compared to our out-groups, which is them. Yeah. And these are the groups that we don't belong to. So this, oh no, I'd never be involved with them. Oh no, they do crazy things, or etc. So this gives us our self-concept. This is what we understand who we are by what we do and who we're connected with in our groups. So if you look at that, pro-social behaviour, volunteering, philanthropy, etc., all of these things more common for individuals perceived to be in our in-group. Oh, somebody's trying to save the turtle, somebody's trying to save the whales, I will give that because I'm more engaged in that space. And this is goal congruity, and this will help drive philanthropy essentially. So the first people that you're going to go to and your target audience is going to be people within your in-group. So that brings us to the end of our webinars. This is run for 6 weeks. I've tried to keep it as brief as possible, but give you as much information as possible in regards to conservation psychology. I could go on for hours, days, months, years, but I'm not going to do that. So please go back and have a look at our previous webinars, Introduction to Conservation Psychology. This starts at the highest level of psychology, understanding human behavior, and then social psychology and the attributes around environmental attitudes, etc. Then we look at behavioral genetics, which is really fun. Overcoming barriers, how we get people involved in what we're doing and increase engagement. Then awareness of recycling your waste, which was just great. That was last week. That was all about why we litter. And then this week, of course, consuming sustainably and appreciating philanthropy. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining me. Please go to our Facebook, our Instagram, or our YouTube channel, which may be on already, and just search the Litter Club Project, the Litter Club Project. You can message me at any time. My name is Josh O'Neill. You can email me at josh@thellitterclub.org, or you can WhatsApp or line me. Here in Thailand, my number is on the screen. I thank you so much for your time, and good luck in your ventures in what you do. Remember that there's many people out there doing very similar things to what you're doing. And if we collaborate and come together more, then we will achieve more and make a greater impact and do even better things. Thank you so much for your time. Take care. Stay safe.